Hey guys, it's Leah here. We're just dropping episode 3. We are not only talking about hunting, but we are talking about shed hunting. Stay tuned.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Mac Outdoors podcast, where a dynamic mother-daughter duo share their adventures, tips, and advice. I am Mia, and I'll be accompanied by the one and only daughter, Leah. It is time to get to outdoors, hunt, shoot, and spend time with family and friends. Let's get this show on the road. Hi guys, welcome back to another week. We're happy that you're here. Last week, we shared the story of my mountain lion hunt. This is Mia. And since we shared the story of the hunt, we have had a lot of people asking about guided mountain lion hunts. And for those of you who are new, welcome to the show. And we want to give you a little more background about us. Leah and I both guide for Wolf Creek Outfitters. They offer and we guide hunts for private land elk, mule deer, black bear, and Merriam's turkey. But we do not guide lion hunts, and Wolf Creek Outfitters does not offer lion hunts. If you get online and do a web search for mountain lion hunting guides in Colorado or whichever state you're interested in hunting in, you can find outfitters who do offer mountain lion hunts. And on that note, Leah, did you see that in Utah they are banning shed hunting?
I did see that. It's not exactly a ban, but more of regulations and restrictions on shed hunting. But I found that very interesting, since that's kind of my spring hobby, is hiking the hills looking for sheds. I actually did a little research on my own about Utah, and I learned a lot actually about what they're up to there.
What's going on over there?
Well, in Utah, you have to have an antler certificate to shed hunt.
A certificate? What's a certificate? How do you do this?
It's called the Antler Gathering Ethics course, and when you complete that, you get a certificate, and you have to complete it each year. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. I went and looked at completing the course to see what it involved, and it gave me a notice that this year they're closing it statewide in Utah for shed hunting from February 3rd to March 31st.
Wow, that's a couple months, huh? February, most of February all the way through March?
Yeah.
Wow.
But also your certificate has to last through the rest of April when it reopens.
So it's closed in April also? Always? Or every year?
Their certificate you have to have from February 1st to April 15th. So shed season will open again on April 1st, and you still have to have your certificate.
Oh, that's really interesting, huh?
Yeah.
Now, on my website, last year, I remember sharing a press release from Colorado Parks and Wildlife that there was a shed hunting restriction here in Colorado, and honestly, I didn't pay attention to too many of the details because it wasn't in my area, and I know that you had shared something about northern Utah and southern Utah, but what do you know about Colorado? Is it similar to Utah?
I did a lot more research on Colorado for this year, and in Colorado there's a bunch of units closed, and for all of the Colorado people listening, it's closed in units 25, 26, 35, 36, 43, 44, 47, 444, and 471. And all of those units are closed from January 1st to March 14th.
Wow, that's a long time. And that's almost all the way through the end of winter and beginning of springtime, right?
Right.
Why do you think they're closing these units?
I read through on the Colorado side, and most of the Utah also said because of calving season for elk and deer, and with hard winters, they're also pushing, like if people are shed hunting, they're pushing the deer around, and they're already having struggle with winter. Also, a fun fact with Colorado, in the Gunnison area, they listed that they are closing that unit with that certain time period because of the sage grouse, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah, that is interesting because they're not quite endangered, but they are something that's very protected, is the sage grouse.
Right.
So that does make sense. Are there any other rules or restrictions in either state? Can you hunt them just on foot or horseback, or what? Are there restrictions for vehicles or for people walking around too?
I know for vehicles, you obviously have to have them registered, stuff like that, but there was no restrictions on vehicles other than wilderness. You can't have vehicles, motorized vehicles on there, but there was no restrictions on dogs, which was surprising. And there's no fees yet, which I am sure is coming very soon since many people are making money off of buying or selling sheds.
Right. Can get a lot of money from shed antlers.
Right.
And that is interesting to me. That makes me really think, because for those of you who don't know, I actually am a writer, and so is Leah, but something that I've found is, as writers, videographers, different people who produce media, you cannot go on to public lands and take pictures and sell them without having a permit first, because you're going to make money off of the images. And the permit to get that license is a couple $100 to go and take photos on public land. So I imagine, or I foresee, that there's going to be some kind of fees for these people, including you, that go shed hunting, because I know you're obsessed, and make money off of the sheds, because the government has to make their pennies off of your pennies.
Right. And same with outfitters as well. They have to pay their fees for using the public land. So
right.
I can foresee that in the next few years.
Yeah, so people should probably keep an eye out for that and do your research this year before you head out to hunt sheds, right?
Right. Another fun fact from Utah is you can't pick up deadheads, which I know a lot of people here, depending on, I know roadkill in Colorado, if you can't pick up a deer bigger than a 4x4, stuff like that, but they are saying you can't pick up a deadhead in Utah because it could have possibly been poached, so you have to report it and give location and take pictures and do all of that. So that was kind of interesting.
That is interesting. You are going to become a private investigator in,
Yeah.
in Utah if you find a deadhead. And for a deadhead, what exactly is that? Is that just a dead animal laying there, or what is it?
A deadhead is, it could have been a lion kill, or someone shot and wounded this animal and never found it. And it's basically the body of a deer or elk that you come across. Sometimes they can be more fresh than others, depending if a lion killed it, or wolves in Montana, stuff like that.
And so you're going to be going to college in Montana. Are you going to be able to shed hunt up there?
Of course I did my research there as well. In Montana, they don't really have any restrictions or regulations yet. I'm sure those will be coming as well. They have wildlife management areas, and they do not open their gates till May 15th at noon, which I thought was an interesting time. But with these wildlife management areas, you are not allowed on there once the gates are closed. It's illegal to be on this land when the gates are closed.
So you'd be trespassing if you decided
Right.
to take off in there and look. So that sounds to me like an area in New Mexico where we've guided hunts on the Sargents down there, and it's a state land trust in New Mexico. It has restrictions on that trust. So is it similar to that, do you think?
That's what I gathered, is that it's pretty similar. And it's actually closed not just to hunters, but all hikers, skiers, cross-country skiers, stuff like that. So it's not just a hunting regulation. It's all recreational use is closed till May 15th, and actually some don't even open till June 1st.
Wow. That's pretty cool, actually. I mean, it seems weird to restrict people from public lands because it's for the public, but since you and I both belong to conservation organizations, we also know about managing wildlife. And it sounds like a good thing for not just the birds nesting, but for the elk when they're calving or deer, and giving them some peace so they can have their babies. And then hopefully we'll have healthy herds in the future, right?
Right. And what I thought was really cool in Montana was researching these wildlife management areas. They actually provide security for these animals while they're calving to make sure that no shed hunters that like to break the rules go out there and mess with them while they're calving. So
wow,
that's pretty cool.
That's interesting. And so everybody keep an eye out in your state and do some research. We mentioned looking up guides for hunts if you wanted to go on a guided hunt, but do your research for, I guess, not just shed hunting, but for hiking as well, because you may be in an area that's off limits and you might be disturbing wildlife. And also, I know in Colorado there you have to keep your dogs on leashes, but there is a different rule for working dogs. So are shed hunting dogs working dogs, Leah?
I would assume that they're considered a working dog. Looking at the research I've done, they're saying you can let your dogs off a leash to hunt, but they're worried if you do go at a certain time that you are going to jump. Your dog is going to push deer and elk and stuff like that. So I guess it's almost a shade of gray if it's
right,
good or not.
So we definitely need to check into that before we send our dogs and get them in trouble.
Yeah.
Or definitely make sure that your dogs are trained so that they aren't chasing wildlife, because that is harassing wildlife, which is illegal, I think, in all these states, right?
I would think so.
So for our listeners, if some of you aren't familiar, I actually have written a few articles about antlers and horns, because a lot of people call it horn hunting or antler hunting or shed hunting. On Beretta blog, I've written a definition as well as some places to find shed antlers. But an antler and a horn are different, and antlers are similar to bones. They grow and then they die and fall off every year. So you can go to Beretta blog and learn more about that, antlers versus the horns, which are actually more like our hair and like a cuticle, and they don't fall off every year. So those are something that you might research before you go out and hunt as well. We'll put links to that in the show notes for you to go and learn more. And Leah, do you have any good shed hunting tips for people today?
Well, doing more of my research, I actually read a article written by a man in Montana, and he was saying a lot of shed hunters should hunt south-facing slopes because they obviously don't have the snow and shady spots, and they'll be drawn more to the south side and will drop on those kind of hills. Another huge tip I have is every trip I go on that I don't bring a backpack, I always end up carrying an armful of sheds out. So don't ever forget your backpack, because it's not fun to have your arms full while hiking out of the hills. And don't forget to stay hydrated as always, because that is a huge one, especially with the altitude here. Hiking up and down really dehydrates you.
And for me, a big thing, I'm not a good shed hunter. A big thing for me is I actually spend too much time looking for animals and I miss the sheds. So what do you have suggestion for me, Leah, on how to find some antlers?
Well, I actually look at a lot of game trails and also fences where deer would cross or elk would cross normally. And sometimes you can even find them on trees. A lot of the time they'll rub off on a tree because they're bugging them, stuff like that. And even out in fields, actually, I found a lot of deer antlers in the middle of fields because when they're feeding, they just happen to fall right off. Even when they're drinking at creeks, crossing creeks, they'll jump and one will fall off. So you don't always have to keep an eye on the ground, but those are just secret places to really look for them.
Well, that sounds fun because it's kind of like an Easter egg hunt, and you get out in the big wide outdoors and find more than just antlers, but it's like looking for little secret treasures out in the woods.
That's what I always say, is it's just a big kid version of the Easter egg hunt every year.
Yep.
So we promised a hunting tip every week, and so my tip for you for hunting in the fall is shed hunting can be addictive, and you usually shed hunt in the spring, but you'll get that itch all through the year. So my tip is keep your eyes up and try not to look at the ground the whole time you're hunting, because as I know, I tend to not see as many deer because I'm always looking at the ground, looking for those sheds that someone might have missed or I might have missed earlier in the season.
That's a really good tip. When you're out hunting this fall, keep an eye out for wild game. Don't get addicted to antlers. Oh,
yes.
No. Look for the ones that are still attached, right?
Right. Sometimes that happens. Just like when we saw your deer, it's almost like I spot the antlers right away, whereas sometimes you'll spot the body first because the hair moving, and I'm like, antlers, they're bedded, but I see their antlers.
Oh, that's perfect. That's a really good tip. We hope you enjoyed the show today, and as I mentioned, we'll put links to key items in the show notes. We hope that you will subscribe and also give us a rating on iTunes so that we can be found more easily in the future. And also, don't forget to follow Leah at legitoutdoors.com and Mia at miaanstine.com. And where else can we find you, Leah?
Out in the woods looking for sheds.
You guys have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in, guys.